All
Just
right,
put
we're
my
live.
face in front of that
Really
Audible
live.
sign.
I know, right?
That'll help right
We
there.
need your Bushwick Bill, Dr. Dean.
No, we don't.
No. How's everyone doing out there? See, everyone's still watching the game right now. But we got our little lead up here to give Cecil a little bit of a snip for the show, and we'll go live, really live in 3, 2, 1. Football is back and quite entertaining, unless you're a fan of defense. Certainly entertaining if you have been watching Tampa Bay and Dallas almost halftime. It's an Audible tradition on Thursday nights. Sigmund Bloom here. Cecil Lammey is on assignment. Hopefully Cecil will be back with us very soon. And before we jump in and pepper Dr. Gene with questions as we get ready to set our lineups for week 1, I'll go to you, Matt Waldman. I know you floated out there that Tom Brady might break Peyton Manning's records. Looking like a pretty good prediction through one half.
Through one half of 18 weeks. But yeah, it's certainly off to a good start with a few touchdowns. You can see that, one, as our buddy Eric Stoner pointed out to me in a text, Micah Parsons likes to blitz, can't seem to know how to go backwards and find the right spot to cover. And Tom Brady's going to pick on that all day. Rob Gronkowski basically makes fantasy analysts look like fools who overvalue speed and don't understand the subtleties of what tight end play actually is about. And he has a touchdown and some key plays. Antonio Brown ain't old. He's just recovered from a knee injury, and you can see that on display. Looks great there. The Cowboys are doing a great job of being able to disguise players by putting them in different looks to try and create mismatches and make the opposing defense think. And that led to a CeeDee Lamb touchdown after putting him in the backfield, after doing a lot of different alignment looks, and then putting him in a normal spot, but running a double move off of that. So certainly when you look at what's going on, it's an entertaining affair. I think people are going to, when we talk about defense, people are going to be very afraid to look at the combo of Shaq Barrett, Levante David, Devin White, Pierre Paul in the middle of the field, and then Joe Tryon Shoyinka, who is basically all going to be lined up as a front five there. I would not want to be facing that as an offensive line as this year progresses. So it's a barn burner of a game. There are some questions though about Dak's health and this, as of course, an annual tradition, this Cowboys linebacking crew.
Yeah, and Greg Zuerlein, who it did finally make a field goal. So, we've seen a few other things I'll add before we get into passing it around with Dr. Gene. Already, Ronald Jones has fumbled, and Leonard Fournette has had one clank off his hands for an interception. So Giovanni Bernard and that nice steady play might be looking more attractive in that backfield. Antonio Brown, the number 1 receiver for Tampa, if you're drafting this weekend, I'm not saying you're going to take him ahead of Evans and Godwin, but if this keeps up, you maybe wish you would have. Gronkowski, that's a good call. Michael Gallup, and there's a lot of reports of this out of Dallas camp, that they're really interchangeable. And maybe not just from a positional standpoint, but from a talent standpoint. Michael Gallup looks good. He had a nice catch that could have been a touchdown, a little out of the end zone. But he looks fantastic. So this game is, just you better hope you had some parts of this game to win your fantasy matchup this week. To win your fantasy matchup this week, you're going to need Dr. Gene's advice. Gene, let's jump right in. We'll pass this around. Headliner this week, Austin Ekeler. Now, we saw, I think, with Doug Kyed from PFF say they're optimistic about him playing, but he's worked on the side. Maybe, Gene, we look at this practice participation a little bit differently in week 1 than we look at in other weeks. How can we use it to understand what to do with Ekeler?
I don't know. I don't like it at all. I don't know what you guys think about it, but 2 not practices. I mean, Doug Kyed was a very good beat writer, but I don't know that he's all that well plugged in Los Angeles, just sort of out of the blue there. And I always feel it's strange to me how kind of underreported I think the Chargers have been over the years, not just San Diego, but now in Los Angeles. So we don't really have a lot to go on. They don't talk much. The beat reporters don't really provide a lot of their own commentary. So to hear optimism and maybe working on the side, I don't know. It's Thursday, and to not practice at all, this kind of came out of the blue on us. I'm concerned. Maybe we get a full practice on Friday and things look good going into the weekend, but we're going to have to hear a lot of optimism on Friday to feel comfortable that Ekeler is in any condition to take a full workload.
Well, let's just do a twofer because it's the same team and talk about the outlook for J.K. Dobbins, an unbelievable talent, and whether or not we've learned anything new or we're only going to know after surgery. And then Gus Edwards going down today.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with Baltimore. What a rough day for them. Was it back-to-back plays that they lost critical players? Gus Edwards sounds like an ACL. We didn't see the injury. We're going to have to wait for reports to decide whether or not we feel like it's an associated situation, but obviously going to be out for the season. Hopefully it's a player that's going to be able to recover for 2022. Dobbins did have surgery today, was billed as an ACL reconstruction. We didn't hear about any other associated structures repaired. That's probably a good thing if the PCL was involved. I mean, we may not always know exactly what happens in surgery, but if PCL was involved, they very likely would have repaired it as well. Sometimes they'll allow that to heal on its own if it's an isolated ligament injury, but if it's involved with other structures like the ACL, they usually repair it. That's not always the case with the LCL. So I only saw one report a couple of weeks ago about another concern of an additional ligament. There's probably some other things going on with him, but it's good news that they were able to get back and take care of that injury within a couple of weeks rather than 4 or 5, which we've seen with other associated injuries in the past. I think that's as positive a sign as we've heard with him in the last week or so. We'll keep an eye out. We may not know exactly how much surgery he had, what he had repaired until we get into the offseason. So keep an eye on that. Hopefully it gets reported soon. But again, this is going to be probably not see much of him in the offseason next year until training camp at the earliest.
Hey, Dr. Jene, I'm seeing just this massive list of injuries for the Giants as of right now. I think as of yesterday, it was Evan Ingram didn't practice, Saquon Barkley was limited, Kenny Golladay was limited, even all the way down to like Kyle Rudolph was also limited. Do you have any updates like for the Giants? Is really Sterling Shepard the only guy we can count on for the Giants this couple weekend?
Yeah, it's going to be hard to know exactly who gets a full workload or not. The fly in the ointment here is that the Giants have to travel to Washington on Thursday night, short turnaround. The travel isn't that far, but it's still a travel week for them. And so players that are coming off injury, still reconditioning, you wouldn't necessarily expect them to get a full workload, full target share, full set of touches, and then turn around right away. And chief among them is Saquon Barkley. It looks like it's almost a foregone conclusion at this point that he's going to be on the active roster, but I just don't see him getting 20 touches and then turning around in a divisional game in Washington and playing on Thursday night. So what you would hope, I think, best case scenario is going to be 12 to 15 touches, maybe a little bit more in the second half, a lot of good goal line and passing down work, and then he gets a full workload, pretty close to a full workload on Thursday, and then we're good to go in week 3. And then he looks healthy doing it, and that there aren't other injuries in the meantime. So I think that's the best case scenario. We'll know a little bit more, I think, tomorrow. Do they allow him to fully practice? How do they list him on the game designation sheet as far as his injury goes? And then hopefully we'll get a little bit of information from the local and national reporters about what he's going to do. Golladay, kind of the same thing. I think, it was always seeming to be more than a low-grade injury. They gave him a good 4 weeks before they put him back to practice. I think this is part of their plan. We may well see him fully practice tomorrow. He may not even have an injury designation. I think he's got a chance to play and hopefully be productive. They put all 3 tight ends on the injury report this week. Evan Ingram, very unlikely to play. If he practices on Friday, it'll be a surprise to me. So I think you can count on him being inactive, and maybe that's with an eye till Thursday night again, or maybe it's going to be a little bit of a longer-term absence. They have until Saturday to put him on injured reserve and still only lose him for 3 games. So I don't think that's out of the question yet either, depending on how they thought this week of rehab and preparing for practice went for him. It looks like Rudolph's going to be able to go. Caden Smith doesn't look like it's the knee injury that he's listed with is a major issue. So Barkley is going to continue to be a very hotly debated topic all the way through the weekend. Hopefully the Giants give us a little bit of information there. Pretty positive on Golladay right now, but I don't think we're going to see Ingram.
You were listening to the Audible. First Thursday back. Great turnout in the chat room tonight. Everybody is football is back. And but so is picking Dr. Gene's brain about all of these injuries. Gene, let's talk about Curtis Samuel. And you were the first one to point this out. People need to know this because, hey, it's time to get your brain agile and nimble for fantasy football. Curtis Samuel, we had some discouraging video, but this isn't just about week 1, Gene. When is probably the earliest we're going to see Curtis Samuel on the field?
Well, what you don't like about this is that they were hoping to ramp him up. I think he probably did a little bit in practice, and then they wanted to see what he looked like on Wednesday. That was the video you're talking about where he ran just sort of a half-speed route took his helmet off, shook his head with his head down, and walked off the field and didn't practice that day. Also not practicing on Thursday. There's no chance he plays this week. And you're talking, asking the right question. What does this mean? Is there a chance that we see him back soon? But again, they're on the other side of that Giants-Washington game on Thursday night. So not able to practice on Wednesday or Thursday. What are the chances he plays in week 2? Pretty low. So he's another player that you might want to pay attention to see if he ends up on injured reserve before the end of the week. I'm not saying that's necessarily where it's going, but if this is his latest aggravation for an injury that he's really not been able to practice with for weeks into months, then this could be a situation where he really needs to calm down for 4 to 6 weeks, and that's an IR situation. So don't count on him for week 1 or week 2. I think it's probably week 3 at the earliest that you'll see him in any meaningful capacity.
DeAndre Swift. First, I'd like to say I'm watching Drew Brees here. And it just kind of kills me that the network, we all know he's got this nice birthmark here, and we're going to put the profile of him where we're not going to see the birthmark. Like, it just tells you a lot about big network and how, people are about fame. It's kind of ridiculous.
What are you talking about? I mean, that's why I kind of turned to this side myself. This is definitely I don't.
You got a good side, yeah.
No, I don't. Neither side is good. So anyway,
I just gave up. I gave up 20 years ago. So let's, moving on to Swift. Tell us a little bit about his groin injury.
Yeah, we've been talking about this for 2 or 3 weeks. The only piece of concerning information about Swift in the last couple of weeks is head coach Dan Campbell saying, I don't know what his conditioning is going to be like, and he may not be ready for a full workload. But the Lions have a very good group of beat reporters, and multiple reporters said he's fully practicing in pads. He's taking contact. He looks good moving, and he's been doing this for a couple of weeks, which is what we've been talking about for a while that we want to see. So just today, and no, it's not Dan Campbell, but it's running back coach Deuce Staley on Thursday saying, we'll count his reps on Monday. I don't see why we're going to keep one of our better players on the sideline for a snap count if we think he's ready. Now, Jamal Williams, as you well know, Matt, is a very capable player. He's going to get some reps as we go. I'm not saying this turns into a 20-plus touch week for Swift, but I'll be surprised if he has much of an injury designation. I don't foresee. I mean, the Lions will sometimes list people questionable and meaning probable, but if he's into the full day of practice on Friday and he's talking to the media and we continue to hear the coaching staff talk him up, I think you can count on a 15-touch day. And if he looks good and his conditioning is there, he could well do more. A lot of that's going to depend on how he looks and how Jamal Williams looks as well. But I think we're outside the window of the highest risk of aggravation for him right now. Hopefully that holds true and he has a good week 1 and he's moving on from there.
Looks like Trey Lance has shed the splint from his finger. Can we expect him at least to be active for week 1? Or, I mean, is there a chance that they might just try and hold him out just because they're facing the Lions? I don't know. What do you think, Dr. Gene?
I don't think the injury is a primary issue at this point. I think this is going to be for the three of y'all to discuss how you think the Niners are going to use the packages they have in place for Lance. How soon are they going to, allow him to do a ton in the offense? But it looks like he's been cleared to throw. He's doing everything other than taking contact. That's really the reason for the limited practice. He's doing a lot of individual drills, but that's the most important thing for him right now. We don't care whether he can take contact or not. He just has to be able to clear to throw the ball, and for that to be a threat so that defenses can't entirely stack knowing that when he comes in, it's very likely to be a running situation. There has to be some threat of the passing game. So the trend has been very good this week. I do expect him to be active. How many snaps he's going to get is going to be entirely inside the mind of Kyle Shanahan, and I'll let you guys read into that rather than me.
It's fun to be inside when you're facing Detroit, at least. It should be fun. I want to see some Elijah Mitchell. I don't know what we're going to see in the second half there. One more round with Dr. Gene as we are back. Football is back. Halftime's almost up. Gene, let's take a walk back in time. I don't know what it was, about 6 weeks. And I'll admit maybe I was part of this. The panic, lots of hand-wringing about Carson Wentz. 5 to 12 weeks. What kind of timeline is that? Well, he's going to be on the 5-week side of it. In fact, he is at the 5-week side of it. He's going to play. How confident should we be in him being effective and him being able to trust that foot? Mobility is a big part of his game. What do you expect on Sunday?
And 5 to 12 weeks was never a timeline, right? I mean, that was just, we don't really know what's going to happen when we get in there surgically. If we find any additional situations, it's going to be 10 to 12 weeks. And if we don't, it's 4 to 6. So that 5 to 12 was oddly and weirdly specific. So as you said, it really wasn't something that we were paying attention to from the beginning. We were saying we won't really know where this is until after surgery, and then we'll dial it in and narrow the timeline a little bit. I still don't know. I mean, he said that he's felt some soreness and moments of soreness as he returns to practice. He's got to get used to playing in whatever footwear and orthotic he's going to use, because they're still going to want to protect that area a little bit. It's fully healed now, but with the soreness there, they're going to support that foot a little bit. But he's been taking full reps in practice outside of the time he's missed on the COVID reserve list for a couple of weeks, and there hasn't been any indication of setbacks at all. The full practices on Wednesday and now Thursday tell you that he's going to play. I don't know how much he's going to run. He may not know how much he's going to run. I don't think they're going to put a lot of designed runs in there necessarily. I think they're just going to rely very heavily on the running game in that respect. So good sign that Paris Campbell is fully practicing after he was listed with an Achilles injury, knowing that T.Y. Hilton is out. Hopefully they'll have enough pass catchers there to be able to run an offense such that we don't have to worry so much about Wentz mobility. But I think it's probably going to be some time before we see him run as much as he did in his earlier days before his injuries with the Eagles. But I don't think there's any question that he's going to play.
Gene, what do we know about Noah Fant's injury, and any concerns that should linger into the season?
Yeah, the only concern I've had about Noah Fant's injury is that Cecil keeps asking me about it. So I think he's asked me about this for 2 or 3 weeks running now. I'm like, why is he asking me about this? The team is saying it's no big deal. The team is saying it's just a tweak. He's going to be back to practice. So I had this nagging doubt in my mind that there may be something more to this. So I was pretty reassured on Thursday when he fully practiced. So that aligns with what Vic Fangio is saying. All these old 80s defensive coordinators going together in my mind there.
Where's Dick LeBeau?
Yeah. Where is Dick LeBeau? I miss Dick LeBeau. So I feel pretty good about him right now. I would feel even better if he's off the injury report entirely. Albert O is probably going to be off the injury report as well. He's also fully practicing. So still don't know exactly what the injury was for Fant. Like I said, I still have that last little bit of spidey sense with Cecil asking me a couple of questions and not revealing too much more about it. But hopefully that means he's just following up on things, and we're going to find that Fant has a full workload this weekend.
You're muted, Chris. See, you took the heat off of Gene.
See,
that's so gracious of you.
I,
It's usually Gene, and I think just that was a kind gesture of you.
I figured I would do it instead of having Dr. Gene do it. Last one for you, Dr. Gene. Tre'Quan Smith. So if we're hoping that Jameis Winston has a few extra pass catchers for this upcoming weekend on his first start, do we think Tre'Quan Smith might be able to make it back on their trip up to the Green Bay Packers?
Yeah, I don't like the sound of this one really right now either, to be added to the injury report. I mean, what he's been dealing with has been a hamstring injury. It's hard to see it as anything other than I thought I was ready and I'm not. So the Saints, things may be a little bit different. It's still Sean Payton. It's still the same. Sometimes we hear about injuries. Many, many times we don't out of New Orleans. So it's very possible that we see him return to a practice tomorrow. But the tone of the beat writers today was that this is not a good thing. So that's the way I'm approaching this. I would not expect him to play unless there's a very promising practice report on Friday.
And similar with Nelson Aguilar. Not that he was going to play Nelson Aguilar.
Yeah, that was odd too. I mean, I just, we always see these New England players listed as questionable, but for him not to practice, and then the same thing, all of the New England beat writers know how to say things without saying them and get on the wrong side of Bill Belichick, and every one of them are raising concern with the way that they're phrasing their tweets and reports today. So yeah, both of those players are looking to the doubtful side of questionable on Thursday night, and we'll see what happens Friday and into Saturday.
Yeah, both those players, they don't have much behind them. We don't need anything behind Dr. Jene Bramel because he's the best, and we get to have him join us every Thursday. You get the injury rounds. By the way, if you're not subscribing, this is the kind of content that you need. Go to join.footballguys.com and get in with a subscription so you don't miss out, and join us on Thursday nights just like Dr. Gene does every Thursday. Gene, we love you. Thanks, everybody. Stay healthy. We'll see you next week. See you. Now I have to execute the 3 overlay. There we go.
There we go. You got it.
I'm so worried about this stuff. I'm so
I
worried
felt
about
kind of split for a minute.
You're right. Split personality. I'm going to flush us down the drain or something like that. Chris, let's fast forward because there's already the question in the chat room. And of course, there's another half of football to play.
Of course.
If you have Ezekiel Elliott right now. So one of the biggest things in fantasy football is not overreacting to week one, but reacting to week one. And we can look back on the trades we made after week one as making our season. And sometimes it's the trades we didn't make. If you have Ezekiel Elliott and things don't change greatly in the second half, are you thinking about getting out at like 75 cents on the dollar? Or do you think this is an aberration and this is just a bad matchup and really you shouldn't overreact to it?
I want to believe that this is a bad matchup. I mean, we heard all of the starting defensive linemen Matt Waldman, he just laid out, and these are not guys that you want to run against. And if I want to borrow a phrase from you, Sig, if you want to use the assumption of rational coaching, where would you want Mike McCarthy and then Kellen Moore to kind of drive this offense, especially in one that's been, for the most part, fairly competitive between the Bucs and the Cowboys? We wouldn't want them running directly at one of the better strengths of their team. And they've already, even in some of the rushes that they've had, they've been able to get some push there. I have actually really liked a couple of the plays where they had both Zeke and Tony Pollard out on the field. I think it was that first third down conversion when they first showed both of them out there on the field together. And what Zeke was the up back and you wound up converting for that first down, which I thought was actually pretty neat. But that's not the way that they're going to wind up pushing the ball down the field in order to keep up with Tom Brady, especially if he's throwing 47-yard bombs to Antonio Brown in order to salt away, at least get them ahead of to keep them ahead of the game. So I think this is more of the team and the coaching staff recognizing that this is not how they're going to keep up with Tom Brady. But let's look at the schedule that they've got ahead of them. They've got the Chargers in week 2, Philadelphia in week 3, Carolina in week 4, and then they got the Giants in week 5. I don't really see, other than maybe the Chargers, right? And maybe Philadelphia, but we'll see how Jalen Hurts after week 1. I'm crossing my fingers that they look good. But we don't really see that being as tightly competitive of a game as tonight's opener. And so when as many different offensive formations that we've seen from the Cowboys, how aggressive that they've been. Dak Prescott's already passed 33 times, I think, in the first half. So I think this is more of them saying, this is how we want to keep up with this team in this scenario, in this game. And then afterwards, this could wind up moving back towards Zeke in the coming weeks, where we'll start to see more of that ground and pound type action. He winds up getting the requisite touches that he needs to be in order to kind of still be that RB1. Hopefully he can pay off that, 4th, 5th, even 3rd overall if you got aggressive about it. I think that's where they start to move as we get into the season. But honestly, I would say that for some folks that are a little bit more bullish on Zeke, even after today's performance, throw out that trade and see if somebody does get a bit jittery about Zeke as he currently stands right now. Considering we're seeing Tony Pollard getting mixed in on passing down, so on and so forth, you could wind up spiking on just some early season jitters that can wind up netting you an RB1 moving down the season.
Rational coaching. Mike McCarthy, he hired those analytics guys and they said, hey, Tampa is really good against the run, so maybe don't run that much. Yeah. That's what analytics will get you. And it sounds right to me. At least we know this is going to be a viable offense. Dak Prescott looks just fine after that mysterious shoulder injury. On the other side of the ball, Matt, Antonio Brown, again, do you do something maybe where you pay more for Brown? You try to get in, because there is such a thing as buying high as a smart move. Do you buy high on Brown, or alternatively, do you sell low on Chris Godwin, Mike Evans? Are we looking at this as a situation where, and Mike Evans is kind of on the milk carton tonight, is this a situation where maybe all three have roughly the same value, or maybe even Antonio Brown is the most valuable fantasy receiver in this offense?
They all have you should look at them all as top 15 wide receivers. I'm not going to be able to tell you, no one's going to be able to tell you which one's going to be the top 5, the top 10, and the top 15 option. But I've been telling you pretty much since probably this time last year that in over a 2-year cycle, this was eventually going to happen. And I think what you're going to see is you're going to see 3 top 15 or top 20 receivers out of this group. So if you think you need a receiver and you think you can have to buy Antonio Brown at the value that he should have been at to begin, to get drafts, then you're investing in what his value should have been. So I'm okay with that, and I'm fine with that here. I will note, Chris did a great job of expanding upon Pollard and Elliott being on the field at the same time. Pollard has been half of his snaps have come with Elliott on the field in this first half. That's from a former football guy, Dwayne McFarland over at PFF. So that's an interesting thought there. And Prescott, I just want to note this. I mean, he's looked good in terms of the results, but that ball does not have a lot of zip on it. And he does not look like he's throwing with the motion you would need to see.
No, it's like an abbreviated motion. Absolutely.
And so, and you can see even early in this half, when they start throwing some of those timing routes, the cornerbacks are jumping them. So don't be surprised if late in this game, if it comes down to having to make a throw like that Tampa Bay seals this game with a basically an interception that cuts off Prescott, who's played well. But again, that's the weakness. And if they can exploit that with this front, but I'm all in on all three of those receivers. And I would just say that if you need to, if 2 to 3 of those get hurt, I still think Tom Brady can throw for 40 touchdowns and do what he did last year, because that's essentially what happened last year.
Well, they have Scotty Miller and Tyler Johnson,
and Jalen Darden, who's been lighting up camp.
Right,
it's just he can't return kicks, and that's why they have Jaden Mickens out there. Yeah.
Right. So another thing is Tampa's defensive backs look like the bad old Tampa defensive backs from the last few years. So this team could get into some really high scoring games, not this Dallas on the other side. So we'll see. A lot of food for thought. We have this game going on, but we also have week 1 to look forward to. The big Sunday slate. And Chris, the topic, week 1 breakout players. When I say week 1 breakouts, who pops into your head? Who's somebody that we're going to be talking about on Monday because what they did on Sunday was a lot better than what a lot of people expect?
I think the one guy that I'm pencil marking, if I don't get a chance to watch the game, I'm going to have to go back, and I don't know if like Game Pass will have all their stuff figured out by that time, but we'll see. DeVonta Smith. I need to see what that Eagles passing game looks like. Jalen Hurts, I have minor concerns about what Nick Sirianni has done, like how he's been integrated into that offensive scheme, so on and so forth. But DeVonta Smith, with all of the hype, and well-deserved hype, to be quite honest, about what he can do off the line, how he can beat both press man coverage and how he works well within zone. How well does he connect with Jalen Hurts right off the bat against an Atlanta secondary? We should be able to see enough of those connections to really get a sense of where that entire offense is at after just a complete roller coaster of a season for Hurts to end the back end of his rookie campaign. But then now he gets DeVonta Smith, Jalen Reagor. Hopefully he's improved now in his second year. Quez Watkins also coming out. It looks like he's going to be their starting slot wide receiver, if I understand correctly. But DeVonta Smith, with as much skill and nuance to the game he already brings at such a young age. I mean, it was almost every single day there would be a beat reporter talking about either Smith as a route runner, Smith and his release techniques, any of those highlight reels. It was pretty much him stealing the show of Eagles camp, other than, Zach Ertz is still here and he's not getting traded. So if you got Dallas Goedert, stop drafting him. That was pretty much the tune throughout most of camp, minus the MCL scare that we had midway. It really has been, this is DeVonta Smith's team. This is he's going to be the one that's going to command the most targets. And I think in week 1, especially against Atlanta secondary, and I do think that Atlanta's offense with your guy Kyle Pitts, they can bring enough on the opposite side to keep them competitive throughout the game. I think DeVonta Smith is that guy that you're going to want to have at least bought in on as early as possible, because he might be that breakout player you needed in week 1.
And the other guy I'm watching, of course, Chris, you brought up Eagles camp, Quez Watkins. He's really put himself high profile, may even get a lot of snaps in the slot. And against Atlanta, that's a place that you want to attack. Real quick, Matt Waldman, go back to the RSP file on Quez Watkins, who now is a clear top 3 receiver for the Eagles.
Yeah, Watkins was really a favorite developmental project, because when you take a look at him, He has great top end speed, but he didn't have a lot of great quickness to his game when you look at the time quickness. And often that's a thing that's correctable in terms of that's something you can improve upon more than top end speed. And usually you can also hide it a little bit just with better technique. So you're a little bit more fluid. And this is a guy that's really worked hard at his game. But what was there in the first place was the ability to go up and win the ball with a thin frame. He was combative at the catch point, very good after the catch, and someone that could work inside for you as well as get downfield. And, I think he's a fun, he's a bold prediction of mine that's probably the one real fluff piece I do at Footballguys all year is the bold predictions. But one of the ones that I made is I think that Quez Watkins could lead this team in receiving and in terms of yardage and touchdowns or receptions yardage and touchdowns, mainly because if he does get in the slot, he gets the benefit of the two-way he goes. He's probably the most physical of the three receivers on this team, even though DeVonta Smith has the most upside. That's the area where he's going to have the greatest work to prove that he can overcome the physicality of the game that's going to be presented to him by top-end corners that will face him. Whereas Quez Watkins probably won't have to face those top-end corners. Mm-hmm. So as a result of that, he could be kind of the guy by default, even though he may not be the most talented guy, to Chris's point, which is, I think it's DeVonta Smith's team in the future, but the present might just happen to be Quez Watkins as they try and find other options to complement Smith and help him get open.
Speaking of bold predictions, I always love doing this. I like doing this to you, Matt. I'm going to come back to you on this one because Jeff Zerbiak from the Athletic reporting that Latavius Murray and the Ravens are going to finalize a deal. So it's good luck for the Ravens that Latavius Murray happened to come available. And for those that said, well, if they would have known Murray would be out there, they might not have signed Bell. Freeman went also clearly a stopgap. We could talk about how much Murray has left. Sean Payton didn't think he had enough to merit a $4.1 million salary. I don't know what the pay cut they offered was. They thought they would have some leverage because it was so close to the season. But again, Murray says, I can just go play for Baltimore. But we still have Tyson Williams. And again, Matt, I remember you were on the couch a year and a half ago, and I said, who's the guy? Who's the Matt Waldman guy? And you said, Tyson Williams. And here we are. I forgot to put on my tweet today that you said that back in April 2020. Give Williams a year or two, and he'll outplay a lot of the backs that get drafted. Here he's going to have this opportunity. Now, I think my hot take here is buy Tyson Williams on this Latavius Murray signing, because I think his role is still going to be as much as he can earn in a good offense and a team that likes him. What is your reaction to the news that Latavius Murray is going to join the Ravens?
Well, I thought Latavius Murray would be a good fit with the Ravens from the sense that he has some skills as a gap runner, and he's gotten a little bit better as a zone runner. And the Ravens like to run a little bit of both of those types of plays. So what Murray can do with you from a gap perspective is helpful. Whereas Le'Veon Bell, I haven't really seen him be a gap runner. He's a heck of a zone runner, but a lot of what he does as a zone runner requires great rapport with his offensive line that he has yet to establish. So all of that, pressing really deep into the line and making alternate decisions that you don't always see good backs do. He breaks a lot of rules, and that made him an exceptional back, but you need to have great rapport with your team to break a lot of rules like that. And he may not ever have that again with any team that he's with, but this is his grand opportunity to impress along with Murray. But like you said, this is the tryout effectively for the player who's been with the team the longest right now, who's had basically a year and a half to learn the system, to get rapport with, whether it's scout team reps and practice reps, to understand pass protections, to understand the route options. The guy who knows all that best is the lone man standing, and that's Tyson Williams. So when you look at it from that perspective, I agree. I think what the Ravens are doing is what any smart NFL team would do, which is we might be confident in this undrafted rookie who impressed the heck out of Mark Ingram last year, 24 hours after camp, knowing the offense, or 24 hours after he got signed last year, and had like an unbelievable inter-squad scrimmage that got him signed to their practice squad last year. And Ingram just glowed about him. But we don't know what we've got in him until the lights come on and he's on a real stage against first-string players. And because it's just like any other performance, some people are lights out in practice and in dress rehearsals, and then you put them up on the actual stage and they just, something turns off up here and they can't perform. And a lot of coaches will talk about players like that who just can't translate it. And so I think before they make these promises of like, we think he's great, they're basically doing the right thing, which is let's not put a lot of pressure on him. Let's let him do what he does. And if he can show that he can handle it, he'll keep getting more. If he shows a few mistakes, you're going to see some other guys come in, and then it's going to be a competition, I think. And it'll still probably be one to an extent, but Williams will be the odd man, be the one to have the chance to win it. And if he starts making bad decisions, then it will be, instead of being his to lose, he'll have to overcome that deficit. So, yeah, I still think Tyson Williams is a buy, but it's like with everything, my big thing with Tyson Williams is he has the talent from what you see on film to become a starter in this league and to play well, but it's a long road. And my baseline prediction for him was if he can win the number 3 in year 2, which he did, then then let's go from there and see what happens. And we were in that position 2 weeks ago. And now we're in a position where we get to accelerate and see how it goes. And I think the realistic expectation here is that Murray has enough left to split, but we're looking at no worse than a Gus Edwards role with more receiving chops, which means he can still be a good RB3 flex for you this year. So I'm still bullish on Williams from that perspective. If he does anything more, it's because he's putting what he did together on film in college, and he's able to translate it to the league seamlessly. And from what I saw in the preseason, there's some promise there, but I'm not ready to make that type of a call. I mean, I think that's a little too bold.
And remember, running backs don't matter, right? Because running production is a residue of a good running game. So maybe it doesn't matter. I mean, maybe the Ravens running, especially against the Raiders and the Raiders linebackers. And the bad side of analytics is that they also tell everybody not to draft receivers who are smaller than 6'2" and 210 pounds, and they self-select out without watching anything about them. So, I'll take Steve Smith all day and Antonio Brown and Odell Beckham and Isaac Bruce and Ty Hilton. I'm sorry, I could spend like 2 hours listing off names on this show, right? So, right. Gonna get up and get something to drink. The offense is stalling out a little bit here in the third quarter. Chris, we talk about Tyson Williams. I like the nickname already, my son Williams. This is my son, bringing back memories of Marshawn Lynch. But we've had, and maybe this is a harbinger, Chris, that already before the season started, we had so many waiver wire running backs, right? Williams, Tony Jones, Ty Johnson, Sony Michel, to where there are waiver wire choices before the season starts. Out of those 4, or you can pick someone else if you want. Because I'm getting a ton of questions this week. Who should I pick up? How much should I pay? Should I drop one for one of the others? Anyone stand out in a good or bad way from the preseason waiver wire running backs?
I will go off the board, and I will actually say that if Justin Jackson is sitting on your waiver wire, he should probably be the guy that you pick up. Go ahead. If this Austin Ekeler news hasn't already scared you into doing so, just look at what he was able to do during the preseason. I mean, you could see the speed fairly similar to what Austin Ekeler puts out on tape, and not just the speed, also the use of the utility in the passing game as well, like throughout the preseason. So even if he doesn't wind up getting the goal line work or the high value touches that we would expect or we would want a running back like on that team in order to get, I still think that Justin Jackson is that guy that you should be picking up over Josh Kelly. I I don't really see at least much value in order for him right now. It just seems like Justin Jackson is that guy that if Austin Ekeler were to sit this week, he'd be the one to get the majority of those touches. He could also still be used in the passing game. So while he might be Austin Ekeler light, with that offensive line that they've completely revamped this season, there's just a ton of room for a guy like Justin Jefferson in order to feast on whomever they wind up going up against. Now, this week might be a little bit difficult. I mean, coming up against Washington, Chase Young, so on and so forth, that might be difficult. But looking at their schedule, like moving forward, not too terrible. They get Dallas like next week, if I'm not mistaken. Then what after that? Like 2 divisional matchups with KC and the Raiders also on tap for that. So I could still, if this Austin Ekeler thing winds up extending into the next few weeks, or even if it turns into some sort of timeshare, which we've seen Austin Ekeler have in the past like couple of seasons since he's become one of our fantasy darlings, I think Justin Jackson is the one that deserves that role in order to either back him up, give him a breather, and the offense doesn't have to change around him. It doesn't have to shift or accommodate what his style of play is. Whereas there could be slight shifts if we were to bring in Joshua Kelly, even like Larry Roundtree, like to some extent as well. So I think like Justin Jackson has been that guy that I've been trying to target and pick up. If I didn't draft him and I do have like the bench slot available, I'm trying to pick up Justin Jackson wherever I can.
Yeah, no doubt he is the best of the other 3 running backs. He just has to stay healthy.
Yeah.
And then Joshua Kelly has to get his confidence back. He lost his confidence last year, and then enter Larry Roundtree, kind of handyman of the running backs. Maybe it'll be him in the end. We'll see. But certainly for this week, DFS lineups, things like that, Justin Jackson. And what an intriguing matchup. Maybe the most interesting matchup to think about is both of these teams are going to be a little different than the last time we saw them. Chargers and the football team, or whatever they're going to be called, whenever we find that out. Let's circle back to the topic in the title. We've got to make that topic in the title, Matt. Breakout players in week 1. Give me your week 1 breakout player.
Well, we're watching them. So, I mean, that's, I pretty much have been advocating the Tampa Bay Buccaneers stack all year. So that's basically that. But I mean, Tyson Williams will probably be one of them because I think against the Raiders, he's going to get most of the looks. So that's another one that I like. I'll go with the fact that they already lost Marcus Peters. So a guy who's been a favorite of mine for the past couple of years is Bryan Edwards. I think Bryan Edwards at the X for the Raiders is going to have a big day just because I think they're going to have to he's going to, even though Marlon Humphrey's a physical guy, I think Bryan Edwards can be more physical and be a little faster. And he's been having a terrific second terrific campaign. So I'm really advocating that as we watched, Zach Prescott throw an interception in the middle of the field on a ball he shouldn't have thrown at all. And then Tom Brady hits Gronkowski here down the line. But I love Chris's call of Jackson. I think that's a great call. And I want to point out another long shot, if you don't mind, just as a guy.
Please.
Just for your waiver wires to keep in mind. And NFL.com mentioned him first because I'm not going to claim this guy, but I've seen him at Iowa, and that's Mekhi Sargent of Tennessee. He made the roster. And he is a very good receiver out of the backfield and a smart runner. And he's outplayed Darrington Evans, who I don't understand the phenomenon, but he's outplayed Darrington Evans, and he's outplayed Jeremy McNichols, another guy who I think was a little bit overhyped too. So most observers have said if he didn't make this roster, it'd be a travesty. And if with Brian Hill hurt, if something happens to Derrick Henry, and knock on wood, it doesn't, but if it doesn't, then Mekhi Sargent might be a guy just to remember his name. They might bring in a free agent at that point as well, but he knows the offense and has played very well, and they love his ability to run through contact and catch the ball. So that's big.
Really quick to go back to Williams, none other than Louis Riddick, who it seems like he knows a thing or two about football. I can't wait until he gets to be a GM somewhere. He said about Williams back on September 6th, so 2-3 days ago, what's happening in the running back room is brutal. Remember the name Tyson Williams, number 34. This young man has size, quick speed, big time breakout ability. Speaking of breakout. So, but you mentioned Sargent. And I think one of the things that people need to remember here is roster spots are valuable. When teams are getting down to that 53, they sweat every single roster spot. So when they carry a player that they don't plan on playing right away, that means they see something in that player's future.
Yeah.
And also it means they probably think they can't get him through the practice squad because other teams know. I'm thinking of Samus Reyes too with Washington. He made the team.
Yeah.
Remember that? That's one not for this
Definitely
year.
remember that name.
Definitely remember that name. He has Kyle Pitts athleticism. There's another Kyle Pitts reference for you. So yeah, I think these are great things to think about. Translating the Marcus Peters injury, which was overshadowed by the Gus Edwards injury, at least in fantasy circles, and how that could affect Bryan Edwards as we're going to watch Vegas open their stadium. What did I miss?
Gronkowski with basically a middle screen or a little seam route with the pressure in Tom Brady's face for a touchdown.
I feel like I'm watching. I feel like this. I mean, like Tom Brady is a Bond villain. And not only did they bring back every starter from last year, but somehow they got a time machine to get 2015 Antonio Brown and like 2013 Rob Gronkowski.
Nothing has tilted me more from a football standpoint. You know, I mean, there's so many other things we could talk about that have tilted us in society, you know, from one fashion or another. And certainly they're more worthy and more important. But nothing has tilted me than our fantasy industry's take on Tom Brady this year. Like, I feel like I've been living in an upside down world.
I've been taking him in every draft. On the Texas Y'allers that Joe and I are co-managing for the Hall of Fame League, I took him. It was a super good call. I took him at number 12. Russell Wilson and Tom Brady. Those were the first two picks. We don't have to worry about anything else. We got Russell.
You went with well. See, this right here should tell us that Sigmund Bloom, as a fantasy analyst and fantasy player, why he's such a good manager, because we know he doesn't like Russell Wilson, and he took Russell Wilson.
Would the word be corny? He's a little corny.
He's just not cool for you. He's not cool for you.
You know, here's the thing, and I think Tom Brady. This is a total aside. Whenever players have a managed image where they're really intentionally projecting something where you can tell that it's very calculated, it's just a little bit of a turnoff to me. But that has nothing to do with how you know, but it's good. He's probably going to make millions and millions, just like Tom Brady. They're going to make, I mean, they're smart. They're leveraging what they've created, the equity they've created as a big time football player, and they're going to probably make more after football than they made in football, and they're going to make a lot in football. So I can't begrudge them for it. But I love Russell Wilson's game, and I just think that Seattle, what we're going to find out is just how much was not having help from the offensive coordinator holding back Russell Wilson, because now they're excited. When a team is excited for a scheme, we should notice that. And Seattle, they're just gushing. You know, they're so excited to get this Shane Waldron scheme out there.
I'm sorry to go off the rails.
No, go ahead.
I just have to ask you this question, because you're a 70s kid like me who was latchkey and stuck watching the Three Stooges in the morning.
Yeah.
So when you watch Rob Gronkowski and he's about to spike the ball, does he look like Curly to you? Like about to do some crazy dance? Because that's what he looks like to me when I see him.
He's the slapstick part of football. You know, he's the clown prince in a way. And I think he's embraced that. And we go over the players that we've loved over the years. And I mentioned Marshawn Lynch already in the show. I mean, they're the players that play with joy in their heart, the joyful warriors. I mean, it's so contagious. And can we say contagious now? That always has lots of overtones. Anyway, do we have to retire contagious?
Oh, I'm getting older and older by the minute.
I know, right? I know. Different times. We just got a couple minutes left. As you know, again, Tampa's got the band back together, and then some. I'll just open up the floor with you. And by the way, again, folks, Chris Allen, you know him, you love him. When I'm hosting, Chris is going to be with us, and I think Chris. We'll talk after the show, because I know we talked about another time that we're going to be having you hopefully on the Audible regularly this year. Anyway, it's Chris Allen, FFWX, if you don't know already, folks. Chris, I'll just throw the whole topic open. What are you excited about watching on Sunday? What big reveal is going to have your attention, because we've been waiting so long for it?
everything. And can I just say, can I say everything? Yeah. Because it really does. That's the thing that we need to pay attention to. There's so many storylines that we have been just talking about and hearing time after time after time throughout the entire offseason about just the takes and the takes and the takes. But like with the Arizona Tennessee game, how are they going to come out now with, they got Derrick Henry as the face of that team, but now you've got both AJ Brown and Julio Jones. So are they going to lean more on the passing game, or are they just going to continue to just bulldoze like Derrick Henry into Arizona's defense? And on the flip side, where does AJ Green and where does Rondale Moore like fit into that offense? Because I've heard nothing good. I mean, I've heard anything like I've heard nothing but good things about Rondale Moore in camp, and I'm expecting him to take on a larger role just right out of the gate. So that game I'm intrigued about. Go up to my area, so Cincinnati. How does that offense going to look? I've been cautiously optimistic about Joe Burrow. I'm trying to keep all the drops with Jamar Chase out of my mind. How does that entire offense look around him? Does Joe Mixon now become like the running back that we've expected him to be for the past like few seasons? On Minnesota's side, I mean, what does that offense now look like without having a really established like third wide receiver, a third pass catcher in that offense? Is it really just going to be Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, Dalvin Cook like all over again? Because essentially they brought the band back together again for another year. So it's just so many storylines. But I guess the one that I am the most intrigued by is the game that's going to occur, well, I guess not in the Superdome, it's going to occur in Jacksonville. Is like, what does Jameis Winston look like now that he gets a second chance? Against, I think Green Bay's defense is, let's say, middle of the road. Coverage is decent, but what is that going to look like? And then when he does throw that inevitable pass into double or triple coverage, that's going to turn into an interception. What does Sean Payton do? Does he immediately turn the ball over to Taysom Hill, let him take the reins, and let Jameis try and learn from his mistake? Does he continue to let him try and figure it out on the field? I guess that's the real storyline I think that I'm most intrigued by, because everything else, we just need to see football. Like, we want to see the Bills back out on the field and Josh Allen just slinging the ball to, Diggs, Sanders, Beasley. I mean, I don't really care too much about the Houston game, but at least seeing Trevor Lawrence out there on the field and what they're going to be able to do in week one. There's just so many storylines, and I just want to see all of it and just wind up writing about it or just talking with everybody about it afterwards, because we've been waiting for so long. And even after tonight, we're going to be talking about tonight's game pretty much up until about 1:00 my time on Sunday, right before kickoff. And then we're going to have the next slate of games, and then it's going to like start all over again. So it's just that's the best part about watching this game and being such a nut about this game, is that regardless of how much content or how much information we have in order to watch, there's still going to be some storyline that somebody's going to be able to just pick up a thread, and then we'll just run with it, and we can talk about it for hours.
It's so wonderful experiencing how time passes during a season, and especially when you do what we do, because everything gives you momentum into the next thing, and you're looking back and you're trying to understand what you just saw, and you're applying it to what's coming, and then by the time you've even taken a shot at that, you have a new set of data to process and adjust your priors, create new ones, and so on, and it gives time its own momentum. And also it's something that we all experience together. I compare it to the click, click, click. We're over now. We're over the first little hill of the roller coaster. And just like the roller coaster, maybe it takes a little while, build up, waiting in line, you get strapped in, and then you go up the first hill. But once you get over that first hill, it is exhilarating to feel the wind in your hair, and we get to do it together. I think that's one of the things that the fantasy football industry and podcasting and all these sites has create communities, and we have a role in each other's lives. I said before the first game that I'm most excited, not specifically just for football, but it means I get to spend more time with my friends. I get to spend more time with our great people in the chat room, all the great football guys, subscribers, everybody who consumes the work that we put out there. You're doing us a favor, because you're validating us. You're encouraging us to do this thing that we love to do. As we're watching, the Cowboys aren't done yet, as we're getting close to the end of the third quarter. we will be signing off here, folks. We appreciate everybody coming out. Saw some familiar faces we haven't seen for a while in the chat room. We're going to be here every Thursday night at 10 p.m. Eastern. I'm going to be back on Sunday morning with the Sunday morning show at 10 a.m. Eastern, and you have all the typical Football Guys goodness, and we're looking forward to sharing it with you. Also want to say, most importantly, as football's kicking off tonight, only thing my mind was on at that moment was Mike Tagliere and his wonderful wife, Tabby. And, just speaking of communities, Mike's a wonderful member of our community, and just wishing him the speediest recovery, and for him and his family and everyone who loves him to come out the other side of this. And, just something I think that I hope that that's the only story we're going to have to tell about our community and somebody affected this significantly, and hopefully we can put it behind us so we can all enjoy football together like we love to do. So on behalf of Dr. Gene, Chris, Matt, Cecil on assignment, we're back, everybody, really back. It's going to be a wonderful season. It's going to be wonderful to spend this time with you always, because you're so very classy.